Hey, welcome in everybody to our webcast. This is Down in Front. I'm Shari St, Clair, News Director for KLRN. Want to welcome in today. This is such a great thrill to have with us Raney Aronson-Rath. She is the executive producer of Frontline, truly regarded as the best investigative journalism anywhere, done anywhere. How wonderful for you to stop in and talk with us today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure. I love being here. I'm happy to be in Texas. Thank you.
Yes, missing that cold weather up in the
Northeast. I know. I
Northeast.
was rescued from the storm. You had something in mind for me. So no,
nice
I'm pleased to be here.
Yeah, great. I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you.
I want to talk with you for a moment about Frontline and some of the things that you guys are working on with Frontline.
Of course.
You have some incredible stories, but you guys are always really on current topics.
Right.
What do you have right now, say, in the next couple of weeks that you're working on that our audience can watch?
Oh yeah, I love this question. It's my favorite is when we're talking about the content, the journalism. We have a really big film coming out about Iraq, told by a remarkable, wonderful new producer and reporter for us, Ramita Navai, who spent almost 6 months in and out of Iraq reporting on the Shia militia, which is one of the new elements in Iraq, and really asking the question of what does the future of Iraq look like as ISIS is retreating? What does Iraq look like today? So she's there now, and you're right in the sense that we do these long-term projects, but we always are trying to put it in a current day context. So you're watching it, you know it's happening now, but then you get to see the deep history of what we've done, but also the contemporary story in its time.
Mm-hmm. Who decides what topics, or is it just dictated by current events?
Oh no, I mean, we have an amazing editorial team at Frontline that I lead, so ultimately I decide on what the films are that we put on the air, but we have remarkable veteran and also new producers who are coming to us now with the best ideas, the best journalism, the best narratives. So it's a combination of producers coming to us with ideas. We have an incredible senior team, managing editors, story editors, so we work together to really find what the right story is for Frontline. And we're all interested in what's happening today in the current affairs, but we never just tell a story that's in the news. So if you watch Frontline carefully, we always are current, but we don't tell every story, right? The reason for that is there isn't every single story that warrants a Frontline treatment of it, or that we feel we bring enough original reporting and a special take on it. So when you're watching Frontline, you may think that you know about the banking industry, or you think that you may know about what happened inside the White House. But when we tell you something new, that's really where we add to the conversation and also the dialogue. You know, we believe in civic dialogue around these issues. And so that's where we're always trying to look at, well, that's in the news, but what do we add? So we don't want to be one of many. We want you to feel like your time is well spent when you're watching Frontline.
So you're really taking a look at the story at the front and then saying, what else is developing back here?
Yes.
What are the legs? What is it that's not being talked about? That's
Right.
got to be a lot of fun. What is the best story? I know they've all got to be favorites,
Yes,
but what's
it's
like
always
the best one?
The hardest question always is, what's your favorite?
Yeah.
I love our political reporting. I think the work that we did in The Choice, for example, is some of the proudest moments that we've had at Frontline really are when we take a hard look at the people who are running the government and we ask really tough but fair questions. And I feel we bring something to it that's really special in the dialogue right now that is respectful but tough but fair, you know, and that's something I'm very proud of. I love it when we take on difficult subjects like the refugee crisis. I thought our film called Exodus this year was very strong because it really told the first-person account of refugees who were crossing. But also it told the story of what's happening to whole migration crisis, right, and what that means for Europe. So I love stories that have characters in them, but I also love stories that have the deeper journalism. So you're watching it and you're understanding the world in a way that you didn't before. That's really what we reach for every time we make a Frontline.
That's good. When you talk about The Choice, and you guys covered this election had to be, the presidential election in November had to be one of the most interesting and exciting things for a journalist as close as you guys were.
Yes.
You know, were you given a lot of access to both Clinton and to Trump?
So access was an issue with both, getting inside the campaigns, but we have really, really sophisticated teams. And as soon as we knew who the candidates were, we went hard at work. And we had been building sources beforehand. So we were pretty well positioned. By the time we knew that Trump was the candidate, we were well positioned with the people around him who surround him, people who knew him in his childhood all the way through to his present day. So we had done our homework to be positioned. But frankly, the Clinton side was just as difficult to gain access to, so we really had to work hard for that too. So the idea that at Frontline we're looking at not just the obvious story that's in the headline, but we're looking at the backstory sometimes gives us an edge on other reporters, because we can go in and say, listen, we're going to spend more time. We're going to be more thoughtful. The story will be told with nuance and fairness and toughness, and then people generally talk to us. So we have a hard jobs in that sense that we have to deliver then on that, of course, right? That's our mandate. That's our mission. But getting people to talk to us has been easier than one might think in this environment.
I would think it would be difficult because anybody that talks to you and sits down and does an interview with Frontline, they know they're going to be asked hard questions. Is the treatment
true.
right now that maybe not the treatment is the word, but the way that Trump is interacting with the press and this kind of new era of, if you don't do a story I like, I'm not going to talk to you. What is that doing for your team?
It's a great question. So we have yet to know exactly what it means for Frontline, but we do know so far the Trump administration has been very collegial to Frontline and to PBS in general. We've gotten great access to the insiders that are sitting right next to Trump and talking to him all day long. We found that when you give them a chance to actually share their point of view, and it's not in a cable network fashion, which not to diss cable, there's a place for everything. I think what we've been offering them is a more thoughtful conversation. They know full well when they're sitting down with Frontline that it's not a conversation that is something that is always comfortable, but it's always fair. Right? So it's not attacking. It doesn't have a tone to it. It's not coming at people with any partisan point of view. And I think that's why people talk to us, is we're not partisan in this matter. We are reporting on Trump just as we did with Barack Obama, just as we did before him. So we're treating our political affairs reporting in the same vein as we always have.
Good. It's an exciting time to get to do this,
yes,
too.
I mean, it's a wonderful time to be a journalist. Journalism's right front and center right now. It's really wonderful in that regard.
It really is. That's
right.
true.
It's exciting, especially for a younger generation of journalists who are coming in, to feel that the work that we're doing is important and valid.
How has social media changed Frontline? Because you've been with Frontline before it really got popular,
yes,
and
indeed.
now. How's it changed?
Well, the social media environment for Frontline has been huge for all of us, right? So we have found, and here we are talking digitally, right? Where this will be a digital conversation, and it's so wonderful to do that. And we have found at Frontline that our audience is bigger than ever by about 70%. By virtue of the work we're doing on social media and digital platforms. And what it's doing is we're talking to people where they are, where they consume news, where they naturally are with their friends. And then we're saying, hey, if you like this, come over here, come to our website, come to our broadcast, right? And check us out. And what we're finding is now our top referrer is Facebook to our website. So it's really incredible to see how our ecosystems are working together suddenly. But we publish actively across all platforms now.
Yes, I've seen that. But so you're saying you start maybe with Facebook, and somebody says, "Oh, Frontline, I've never heard of them." They start with Facebook.
Exactly.
They go to your website, and then they're,
right.
"Oh, wait, I can see them on traditional TV." So it's kind of working the opposite
So
way.
our broadcast numbers are up, which is terrific, right, in this era, and our streaming online, which we care about deeply, right? So people watching our full films on whatever device they are, mobile, iPad, or their television, people are watching us in such larger numbers because of the way that we can bring people under the tent of Frontline. And we see stations doing that as well. That's really exciting for me, is that all of a sudden station communities are really starting to build their social media networks to say, hey, come and watch our shows like Frontline, you know? Mm-hmm. And that's been exciting.
What kind of new technology, since you are working more in the digital realm? I know you guys talked about, or you've talked about spherical video.
Yeah.
What is is that?
Oh, so we have had this effort over the last year and a half that is looking at 360 videos. So this will be something that is in the vernacular of most people in about a year or two from now, which is to say that there's new technology that does virtual reality or spherical video, which is essentially, as opposed to a 2D picture like we are right now, which is a lock shot between the two of us. It's showing the whole environment. So as if the camera was right in the middle of us and filming all around us. Okay. And so this is something that doesn't have high penetration right now in terms of audience, but people are deeply interested. And the reason that we're doing it is because I frankly started to feel like if journalists didn't get in the room on some of the tricky questions about spherical video and virtual reality, then there would be a lost opportunity to reach a whole new, first of all, generation, but also a new group of people to public media, you know, which is what I really care about, is how do we bring people under the tent who never thought to watch PBS before, who never thought to watch Frontline. So this has been a way to introduce people to our storytelling. And for some of them, they just stay in that realm. They're not interested in the big linear films, but a lot of them are very interested in our bigger work.
I think the 360 that I saw, you were in Mosul.
Yes, in Mosul, I know, amazing.
It was incredible to just turn.
So that was my favorite.
You feel like you're there.
I'm so glad you saw that one. It was literally my favorite 360 film that we've done. It's with Gaith Abdulahad, and he brought us inside Mosul. As the fires were on, I mean, it was amazing. He went in the tunnels, he went in the ISIS tunnels, and so people feel transported. So we released that on Facebook. But we also released that in goggles, so like you could actually see the 360 environment in goggles. But because we're public media, we want everybody to be able to find us, so and not to have to pay for it, right? So that's been amazing.
What is your method for vetting information? When you guys do investigative reporting, you've been very fortunate to have everything fall into place and not be sued, not be seen as somebody that's made mistakes. How do you vet this information and make sure you're being accurate?
Well, Frontline's editorial team is really strong, and you know, we have never had any major investigative problems because of our vetting, which essentially starts with, first of all, story selection, right? So story selection is one of the most crucial parts for vetting. You don't think about it like that, but when you're actually considering a story, we can spend anywhere from 1 to 3 months asking tough questions around the table with my editorial team about whether or not this is the right story for Frontline. So we're looking at what is the underlying journalism, who is the journalist, and can they actually do the work factually, and can they prove what they're trying to report on? So as opposed to opinion reporting or, you know, surmising that there's some corruption going on, do they actually have the goods? Do they have the documents to prove it? Not just people's opinions, not just confidential sources, right? So this is something that we do on the front end of the process. After we've commissioned a big documentary, we work with our reporters the whole way through. And then at the very end, the last month, so it's not a week, it's basically a full month before a film goes on the air, where we have an incredible managing editor, Andrew Metz, who comes from 60 Minutes, and he's my number 2 on the editorial side. And he and I battle all the issues to the ground. So essentially, it's a Socratic method where every single assumption that we have in a film, we go through line by line. He is so diligent. And then if there's anything that we feel uncomfortable about or we don't feel ready to publish, we don't publish. So that's the other big mission and mandate at Frontline, is if we're not confident in the journalism, we simply do not publish it. We are not afraid of killing stories. We're not afraid of pulling back if we don't think we have the goods. And it's really important to have that latitude to be able to do that.
Where you're not really under pressure to just get it on the air. It's we're going to make a decision based on the best thing to do.
And we have had nothing but support from the stations and PBS on that matter. There have been situations in which we've delayed films or we've had to hold things back. Or in fact, we've had to say, you know, this project doesn't work for us anymore. And we have had nothing but solid support from the people in charge at PBS about that. And that is huge. And my station has been completely behind us. John Abbott and the folks who run WGBH and all the stations around us have huge trust in us for a reason. And it's because we will walk away from something if we don't feel it's vetted and journalistic.
That's a very smart thing for management to think about, because a lot of stations are so
Absolutely.
tied into ratings and other things. Your commercial stations, that often that they're not given a chance to think that way. What about fake news? I've got to ask you, what?
Yeah, fake news. Well, it's unfortunate, right? And what we saw happen on Facebook and other platforms in the
Right.
election is really unfortunate. I think one of the biggest things that we've been talking about is media literacy. So I can't tell you how many times young people come up to me really alarmed by fake news, but also by the fact that they're just getting one point of view on their Facebook feed. So my first question is, well, where do you get your news? And when the answer is Facebook, I say to them, that's not actually a news organization. So, well, you may taste news on Facebook. Go to the actual newspaper online. It doesn't matter. You don't need the hard copy of it, but make sure you're educating yourself, right? And not just sort of sitting back and letting news come at you. So if you're a concerned citizen, you have to actually be literate to understand what's real and what's not. And that's very difficult. And I'm advocating at my son's local school, you know, how do we teach children media literacy so they grow up knowledgeable about what they can trust? That's very
a hard
difficult.
question. How,
Right.
And that's a new question. It was a
It's
question no
very
one had
new.
to answer 10
It's
years
very
ago.
new.
What about news stations that are fair and balanced? How do they get around somebody who doesn't like a story and just says, oh, it's fake news or you made it up?
Well, I think part of it is not then getting in a major conversation with people who are saying things of that nature. So one thing that I think that happens in this new social media environment is somebody says something like that, and then if you respond too quickly and too vociferously, that just raises that, right? So that raises the stakes, first of all, right? But a lot of times we'll have people complain or something will happen of that nature, and we just watch to see what happens with the conversation. Usually it goes away. We haven't had a lot of situations like that at Frontline where we felt that the conversation got out of hand. In general, our audience is pretty responsible. So that's one thing, is cultivating a responsible audience and conversation with your audience is very smart to do, especially in social media. So that's something we're really cognizant of that we had never done before actively in conversation with people who have like questions or concerns. You know, to a certain degree, we owe that to them, right? We owe them the transparency of a conversation if there are concerns. And I don't think enough of the media does that. I think a lot of it is an echo chamber and a lot of it is a big argument and everybody's yelling. So you can't really settle down enough to just have a conversation about what matters and what's truthful and what is fair, frankly, right?
Right, right. And if you can't have that two-way conversation, then maybe it's not a conversation to have
Right.
with somebody if
Right.
they're not going to listen.
Right.
How long have you been with Frontline?
16 years.
16 years.
16 years. I started as a producer in my early 30s and made 7 films for Frontline, so I learned a lot of what I know from actually making documentaries for Frontline. And then I became senior producer 8.5 years ago and executive producer now almost 2 years ago.
That's a fantastic move for you.
Yeah, 16 years though. It's a lot of years as they climb up, right? You're like, wow, that's a long time.
That's a long time,
So
but there's so
public
much
media,
knowledge you
yes,
learn.
Yes, it was important to do everything for Frontline to be able to run Frontline.
I'm sure you truly did work your way up.
Yes, it was
What did you want to
wonderful.
be when you were little?
A journalist.
You did?
Yeah, I had a couple of other dreams as well. Wanted to be an ambassador to Japan. I thought that would be wonderful, until I was told by a very sage person that, well, when you work for the government, you have to believe in your government. You have to say what the government believes if you're an ambassador. And I said, well, couldn't you question that? And they said, oh, maybe you should be a journalist. So I ended up in journalism very happily. And I started actually as a journalist when I was 18 in my college paper. So it's been many, many years and thoughtful career. It's been wonderful.
Well, congratulations. You do a
Thank
great
you.
job. And
Well, to you as well. Thank you
you.
for also pushing the envelope in this area too.
well, thank you, and continued success with Frontline. We'll be
Thank
watching,
you.
and I think it's great for people to get a chance to see the person behind it.
Thank you.
yeah.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thanks for being here. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time on Down in Front.